Welcome to How We Grow, an essential playbook to grow and scale your vacation rental business with advice and insights from the best in the biz, with your host, Lynell Gordon. Welcome to How We Grow, the vacation rental show, where we give our guests the opportunity to give advice to new property managers or property managers who want to grow. We've picked some of the most expert operators in the whole industry. And today we are very excited to have Dennis Robinson with us. Dennis is the CTO over at Midgett Realty, and they are located in Hatteras, North Carolina. And Hatteras is a place that is really cool. It's very secluded. So it's a very unique market. It's very insular. But Dennis has been marketing there for the last 20 years with Midgett. And Dennis, thank you so much for coming to be on with me.
Thanks for having me, Lynell. It's good to see you.
And it's good to see you. It's nice in our industry, guys, that we make friends. And Dennis is a very good friend of mine. So if you want advice after you listen to this podcast, Dennis, are you willing to give advice to people that call?
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right. Dennis Robinson at Midgett.
Lynell's been a great friend of mine too.
So let's talk for just a minute. The first thing I want to start out to talk about is tell me a story about guests or owners or both. Let's talk about both.
Talk about both. So, we have about 500 houses on the Outer Banks, like Lynell said, and we're in the main tourist season, summer season, so we get a lot of Northeast customers that come down, and the demands are always a little different. But one of the stories that sticks out is we had and we're also the Blue Marlin capital of the world. We have a lot of fishing tournaments here.
Blue Marlin, yummy.
Yeah.
No.
He called in and wanted an early check-in, like many of our guests do. And as Lynell says, we're pretty isolated, so staffing is always an issue, and getting people in early before check-in time is oftentimes hard. So the guest had a demand. It was an emergency. So we're rearranging the schedule, and coming to find out, she had just had a spray tan, and that was the emergency. And if she left it on, she was going to be orange for the rest of the week.
Spray tan. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Holy
But
cow.
another good one, Lynell, is we had a guest that called in one day, staying oceanfront, and oftentimes, even though we do live in a national park, they think the beach immediately in front of them is private, which is not. So they called in and demanded that we go in and dig up the shipwreck. Mind you, we were the graveyard of the Atlantic too, so they wanted us to dig up the shipwreck because it was possibly going to hurt their child or cause an unsatisfactory experience on the beach in front of their house. So that was a good one. You just never know when the phone rings what's going to present itself, and I think that's part of the allure of the whole vacation rental industry. Is every day is a different day, so it's always fun, it's always exciting, but there are some days that you just want to kind of have wine for breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to mention that Hatteras Island, where you're how many miles out into the ocean are you? Atlantic Ocean?
Well, it's a 60-mile long island that's completely surrounded. So we're off the mainland about 2 miles. So it is pretty exclusive, pretty nice. And oftentimes, if you see a hurricane on the East Coast, they do a 400 miles or 300 miles southeast of Cape Codder, because we do stick out into the Atlantic and oftentimes have hurricanes skirt us or pass pretty close by.
It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It really is gorgeous. And the seclusion is part of its charm. So in that market, because you're secluded and you're a drive-to destination, people have to fly somewhere and then they drive. Your closest airport is how far?
It's about 3 hours to Norfolk Airport. So yeah,
right.
3 hours away.
So when you market in that area, it has to be difficult because you have to pull people in there, and you do great, not only with repeat guests, but in pulling people into that market because it is so unique. So if you had to give a piece of advice to someone who's looking to grow, or who's maybe why don't we start out with talk to people who are in exclusive areas who are hard to get to and they're only in drive to. What are some of your tips for them to be able to pull guests into that market?
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes when we're talking about marketing plans, we do rent properties, but we do a lot of destination marketing. We have a great visitors bureau here that does a lot of destination marketing, so but we piggyback on a lot of their efforts and sell the experience. We sell an experience. That's what we're marketing, is a true experience. We're not selling a 6-bedroom house on the ocean front. We're selling the Hatteras experience. So telling your story, I think for a while we did a really poor job of that. You know, like we've been in business over 60 years. So telling your
Wow.
story and allowing people to make that local connection in your messaging really is how we've been super successful. You'll see us at all the community events. You'll see us there because we are a family, we're a team. And we, you know, many of us are born and raised here like myself. So we want people to experience what we have, you know, grown up around, what we see every day. So you're not selling a product, you're selling an experience. And that's what I always try to tell people that work in our department here, that that's what we're really going after. So if you can tell your story, tell your story. Because a lot of people are corporations and they don't have a lot of story to tell.
Oh, no kidding. So if you, let me ask you this, what differentiates Midgett from the other companies on the island?
Right. So like I said, 60 years in business, is a family business. We're now in the fourth generation. So the fourth
Mm-mm-mm.
generation kids are working in the business, which is great. And it still embodies what we started with. That, you know, when you're here, you're part of our family. You're part of, you know, the Hatteras community. And so we excel at that, but I think also we excel at, you know, marketing and what we've been really focused on as some of the national brands have moved into market is service and communication. I know it sounds cliche, but communication is so key here. I mean, having your offices locked maybe or not answering your homeowners it's unheard of in our business model. So that open communication line is what you've got to keep open. Keep your doors open. Keep people at your front desk. You know, you might not have a lot of traffic, but the people that want to come through your doors, talk to them, treat them like your family.
You have a very interesting owner story that I think we talked about. I want you to tell the owner story about the one who's so frustrated at you, got really frustrated with you.
Right. Yeah. So Lynell knows I have a big eared basset hound and a golf cart. We take a ride every afternoon. But so one of the homeowners was flagging me down in one of the neighborhoods, and I'm thinking, what's going on? She said she had a bone to pick with me, was I think the term she used. And I said, well, man, what's wrong? How can we fix this, you know, issue? And come to find out, she was upset because in the last few years we have rented her house too much, and she was not able to enjoy her happy place. So there's good and they're bad, but yeah, ended up
That's
getting a few more
hilarious.
blocks in her calendar. Yeah.
Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, there's this thing that you have, I think that where owners can block up their own houses. But I think that's when you get to that place, you know, you're in a good place.
She was half
For,
kidding, but I mean, yeah, it's a good place to begin. And since COVID, our calendars have been full and full early in the
thank
season.
God. Thank
Yeah.
God. That's a really good problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
For people who want to grow, you've done significant growth over the years, and you haven't acquired other companies to do so. So tell me a little bit about your strategy for acquisition of inventory.
So for a long time, we put that on the back burner, and that was a huge mistake. So we like to learn from our mistakes. We hired a dedicated person to facilitate or to attract new homeowners, and that's been great. We also are using inventory; they've been helpful for us. But my advice would be is back to the communication, and giving, like, if you're going to give suggested rates, set them realistic. Don't just try to compete with your neighbor, because you're gonna have to. You're gonna have to produce, and I would much rather under promise and over deliver than over promise and under deliver. So I think that's it. And if you're trying to grow strategically in areas that you're able to support. I mean, we are selective on the properties we take because sometimes an owner's not a fit, sometimes the house not a fit, sometimes we have too much inventory in that segment. So taking everything just to grow, I think, could potentially damage your brand. So we're really cautious of that, and also what you can support. You know, everybody's having trouble with labor, so don't take on more than you can support. I mean, we predominantly on the Outer Banks here earn on Saturdays and Sundays. We're doing some new flex days that it's given us more flexibility to have cleaners during the week, but strategically grow. Look at your opportunities, your pockets of opportunities. Use your analytics to find out, maybe you could have rented 5 bedrooms. You don't want the 10 bedrooms. I mean, everyone wants what's shiny and new, but look at what pockets of inventory you excel at. You have excess demand and that you can support.
Mm. So yours is not it's a very strategic growth. Strategically grow based on the inventory you're looking for. So find out what inventory you want to have and then go after that inventory.
Correct. I mean, like we built this brand of consistent cleaning. I mean, sometimes we fall short. Everybody does. I'm not going to tell you don't, but we don't want to come in with a new year where, the national brand comes in and you're able to acquire a lot of properties quickly from their fallout and then not be able to support it. So just for your growth in 1 to 2 years, you've wrecked your brand that you've been established for 60 years. That's probably been really strategic.
I know that one of your strong points, one of the strengths that you have is you're very creative when it comes to marketing. I mean, you're really creative. Tell me about the most successful marketing campaign you've done for guests coming in or owners,
Right.
whatever.
So I think we haven't done it in a few years, but what we did is we bought the bracelets that everybody was wearing. We called them Lance Armstrongs. But anyway, they were branded. They were black and white, like our lighthouse here. And what we did is every guest checking in, we'd allow them, I think it was 10 per home. And then what we would do is you would see them out through the community. So we were basically branding our guests here on the island. So we would know that if you were in shopping for groceries or whatever, that these guests were staying on property. So we would, have people thank them for staying with us. And then what we did in addition to that is we had what we called the price patrol. So we'd go out frequently throughout the week and we'd give them swag. Oh, you're staying with Midgett Realty, here's some swag. So really people wanted to stay with us, but we also knew that we were sending our guests to the restaurant, to the store. So people were seeing it and say, oh, we saw, for breakfast this morning at the restaurant, we had a table of 10, they were all your guests. We saw their wristbands. So it was good in so many facets. And this is a little, maybe too much on the story, but we had a kid that unfortunately was wearing a wristband and had an incident in the water with an animal. And he had to leave vacation early because he had the bite. And it was on the news and whatever. But anyway, we offered that family to come back next year for free on us because they were representing it. And so it was a wildly successful campaign we called it branding our guests, but we called it the price patrol. So, but we did that for a few years when we would do different color wristbands each year. So they were kind of collecting those as well. So
it made them feel special.
It did. It was, and it made them feel there again, like part of our family because people were thanking them for staying with us. And it wasn't just, somebody in the grocery store.
Right. Well, that's a great idea. So if you had one piece of advice for property managers who are looking to grow, what would you tell them?
Strategic growth. That's I keep going back to that. And also when you're growing, look at efficiency tools. A lot of times if you're at a conference or wherever you're getting sold and you're looking at all these tools, more is not always better. Shiny is not always as luxurious as you might think it is. Look at what your end game is. Like where are you trying to go? I mean, if you want to grow this, like I lost my earbud, sorry. Like if you're trying to is there a tool that can help you do that? Like if you don't have staff, can you see the lock solutions or any kind of home automation? Like look at all that in what your end game is. Don't just keep buying more tools and more tools because sometimes less is more and you can be so much more effective and efficient if you just know what you're trying to do and look for a specific tool instead of just looking at what's shiny and new.
Built by property managers for property managers. Streamline is a powerful software that gives managers enterprise-level capabilities to drive more revenue and improve operational efficiency. Migrating to Streamline allows property managers to gain functionality while reducing the need for multiple vendors, improving flow by logging into a single system and reducing redundant technology costs. With Streamline, property managers achieve revenue lifts by leveraging our fully fledged communication center, reservations quoting system, revenue management tools, homeowner acquisition CRM, and powerful direct OTA connections. Streamline also has industry-leading trust accounting and report capabilities to give you clarity in an overall company performance. Learn more about Streamline Vacation Rental Software at streamlinevrs.com.
So what are the most important tools that you've used to help with your growth?
Well, I think it all starts with a solid core CMS. I think that's like where you've got to start. You've got to build a good platform before you can go anywhere. And we've been through a few changes. We're currently using Streamline, which we love. But in that, we set up a few other ones, like I said, and some of the mistakes we made is we would set it up how we've always done business, and I think that was a fail on our part. So when you're looking at it, you're growing, start with that core property management, but with an open mind of how other people are doing it. Talk to your colleagues, talk to other people in other markets, and see what is the best way to get to the end game. When we all rent houses here in North Carolina, it's a little bit tricky with trust accounting, but it's the same game. So talk to your people and figure that out and build a solid core before you do anything. But to answer your question, Lynell, we are RevMax users too. And that has been a life changer. In 2020, we were worried to death we were going broke, right? Everybody was. But when they opened our bridge back and they allowed guests, we sold our inventory too quickly. So we effectively thought it was great at that time, but we left a lot of money on the table. So the next year we implemented RevMax and it was super successful. And last year we had pretty much a consistent occupancy because it's been so good, but we were able to increase our revenue significantly through that tool. So I think build that core platform and then figure out what your goal is. Like we know that we only have a short window to rent here. And so maximize the opportunity in that window. And RevMax has really done that for us. I could go on for our tools all
No.
day. We have a solid platform, but those are the two biggest pieces of advice right now.
RevMax is a tremendous tool. It really is. When I told my sister, I said, you have to implement this because it's going to make you money. It's going to make you more money. So I'm glad. And it's true. It does. It really
I told
does.
you the same thing.
So if you were going to look for peers to help you with advice, where would you go?
So I like users conferences as a term, like the Streamline Summit has been really great for us because a lot of the people are using the same tools, so you can bounce ideas off of them. We've been really successful there. I also think building relationships like Rochelle, for an example, I can pick up the phone most days and get a hold of Rochelle and say, Rochelle, how are you handling this? Or she'll call me. So to build some relationships in other markets where you can pick up that, phone and call and say, how are you doing this? And a lot of times we've done it with people in market too, because we're competitors, fierce competitors, but sometimes, in your market, you're up against the same hurdles that you guys can all collaborate and effectively overcome.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's really important too in any business. If you think about it, there are always peer groups. A lot of times you pay for them. I think Matt Landau has a really good, solid base of people that on his platform that he uses for this. And if you go to the events, the industry events, you're going to find people that you meet and they're great. They're there for the same reason you are.
That's great. You're right. He and Steve Schwab are doing a Keystone
yeah,
kind of small conferences. Yeah, I think I'm going to attend one of those next month. I'm looking forward to that. It's a small group, no vendors. So I think that'll be a great think tank. And
I think that's an excellent idea. I would love to be a fly on the wall and listen. So you'll have to come back and tell me how things are going. Yes, no details, just how things are going. I'm going to ask you one last question. If we could make any technology that would help you, what's missing in the industry that we don't have?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, we're pretty happy with ours. There are some deficiencies as always, but an all-in-one platform is what I've always strived for. I think we're getting close. You know that. I mean, from LSI tools that have plugged the hole in many solutions for now, but like an all-in-one tool.
One ring to rule them all. That's what everybody wants. We do. And look, maybe one day in the future we can put everything together.
I mean, we are getting close to, and we've done a lot of consolidating and in our conversations, it's like you might lose something in the consolidation, but that Streamline, no pun intended, it it worked. There's a lot of give and take. And I think that's what another thing that we look at is the give and take when you're making those decisions.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis, for coming and
Welcome.
chatting with me. I really do appreciate it.
Anytime.
This episode of How We Grow is brought to you by Streamline. To find out more about how Streamline can help grow your vacation rental business, visit streamlinevrs.com. Make sure to search for How We Grow in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. On behalf of the team here at Inhabit, thanks for listening.